The farmer's shadow fell across the orc girl's face, and Everett knew in that single heartbeat he would not move, no matter what came next. The square had gone silent, except for the scrape of boots on cobblestones as 10 men tightened their circle around her. She stood with her back to the fountain, green hands empty at her sides, tusks barely visible between parted lips as she struggled to control her breathing. Her pointed ears were pressed flat against her dark hair, and the burlap sack she had been carrying lay spilled at her feet, winter apples scattered across the ground. "Thief," Gareth Morrison said again, louder this time, his finger jabbing toward her like a weapon. "Caught her red-handed coming out of my barn. Had my tools in that sack." Ethan looked at the apples, then at Gareth's flushed face. He had known Gareth Morrison for 30 years, had watched him grow from a boy who pulled wings off butterflies into a man who found cruelty in small, legal ways. He looked at the girl again. She could not have been more than 20, and fear made her seem younger still. "Those are apples," Ethan said quietly. The crowd stirred. Ethan rarely spoke in gatherings, and when he did, people listened. He had earned that over 2 decades of fair dealing, of lending tools without demanding their return, of helping birth calves in the middle of winter storms and refusing payment. His farm prospered through honest work, and his word carried weight. Gareth's eyes narrowed. "The apples are what she bought to cover her tracks. I saw her coming from my property." "Your property borders the old road," Ethan said. "Half the village walks past your barn to reach the market. Are you calling me a liar?" Ethan stepped forward, placing himself fully between Gareth and the girl. He felt her tense behind him, heard the sharp intake of breath. "I am saying I see apples, not tools. If you have proof, show the magistrate. Otherwise, let her go." The square hung suspended in that terrible moment when violence becomes possible. Gareth's hands were fists, and 3 of the men with him were his brothers. But the others were watching Ethan now, and doubt had crept into their faces. "You defending an orc?" Gareth asked, and there was something dark and delighted in his voice, as though Ethan had handed him a gift. "That what this is? Our good farmer Ethan has a taste for green skin." Heat crawled up Ethan's neck, but he kept his voice level. "I am defending fairness. Show proof or step aside." "The proof is her kind," one of Gareth's brothers muttered. "Thieving is what they do." "Then it should be easy to find your brother's missing tools," Ethan said. "When you do, bring them to the magistrate with a formal complaint. Until then, she walks free." He turned his back on them deliberately, offering his hand to the girl. She stared at him with eyes the color of amber, wide with shock. Up close, he could see she was small for an orc, barely reaching his shoulder, with a slender build that spoke of too many missed meals. Her clothes were threadbare, patched in several places. "Come on," he said gently. She took his hand. Her fingers were calloused, strong despite their trembling. He pulled her to her feet and bent to gather the scattered apples, placing them back in her sack. The crowd parted as he led her through, but he could feel their eyes, hear the whispers starting like wind through dry grass. They walked in silence until the square was behind them, and the road opened onto farmland, fields lying fallow in the late autumn afternoon. Only then did she pull her hand free. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was rougher than a human woman's, but clear. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." She studied him with those unsettling amber eyes. Why? He thought about the question. The true answer was buried deep, tangled in memories he did not let himself touch. "Because it was right," he said instead. "Right," she repeated as though testing the word. "That man will hate you now." "He hated me already. I have better soil than he does." A small, startled laugh escaped her. It transformed her face, softening the fear, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Awareness, sharp and unwelcome. She was beautiful in a way he had not expected, had not let himself consider. The green skin that others found monstrous held warmth beneath it, and her features were fine-boned, almost delicate except for the small tusks. "I am Jaida," she said. "Jaida Blackthorn. Ethan Everett. I know. Everyone knows you." She shifted the sack to her other arm. "The farmer who lost his wife 5 years ago and has not spoken more than 10 words at a time since." The words landed like stones in still water. He had not heard it said so plainly, and certainly not by a stranger. "People talk. They do." She looked back toward the village. "They will talk more now about this. Let them talk." But she shook her head. "You do not understand what you have done. That man, Gareth, he will make trouble. He will poison others against you. You spent something today, something valuable. My standing." Ethan said it matter-of-factly. "I know. For a stranger, an orc. For what was right," he corrected. "Where are you staying?" She hesitated. "The old mill. It is abandoned, but the roof still holds in 2 rooms. That place is not fit for winter. It is what I have." Ethan made a decision he knew he would question later, in the dark hours when doubt came calling. "I need help on my farm. Harvest is done, but there is plenty of work. Repairs, preparing for winter, clearing the new field. Room and board in the worker's cottage, plus wages when I sell the spring crop." Jaida went very still. "You are offering me work. If you want it." Why, there it was again, that question. He met her eyes and told her a different kind of truth. "Because that cottage is weather-tight and heated, and winter comes hard here. Because you look like you have not had a decent meal in weeks. Because I can use the help." He paused. "Because Gareth Morrison will not stop with today, and if you are on my land under my protection, it makes you harder to touch. It also makes you a target. I am a farmer. I am used to working with stubborn things that do not move easily." She laughed again, that same surprised sound. Then her face grew serious. "If I accept, the village will assume things about us. They will assume things regardless. And that does not bother you." Ethan thought of his empty house, the silence that had filled it for 5 years. He thought of Sarah's grave on the hill, beneath the oak tree where she had liked to read in summer. He thought of all the ways he had failed to protect her when sickness came, how he had watched helplessly as she slipped away. "What bothers me," he said carefully, "is turning away from someone who needs help when I have it to give. The rest is just noise." Jaida searched his face for a long moment, then she nodded. "All right, I accept, but I work for what I receive. I do not take charity." "Fair enough." He gestured down the road. "My farm is an hour's walk. We should get moving before dark." They fell into step together, and Ethan tried not to notice how right it felt, having someone beside him on the familiar path home. The worker's cottage sat 30 yards from the main house, a small stone building with a solid roof and a good fireplace. Ethan had not used it since his last hired man left 2 years ago, but he kept it maintained out of habit. He showed Jaida inside, pointing out the wood stove, the narrow bed, the trunk for storage. "Privy is out back, shared with the main house," he said. "Well water is clean. I will bring bedding and supplies. There is salt pork and bread in the larder, help yourself." She set her sack down carefully on the table, running her hand over the worn wood surface. "This is more than I expected. It is just a cottage. It is a place." Her voice went soft. "A real place, not a barn I have to sneak into or a ruin where the wind cuts through. I have not had that in a long time." Ethan shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the gratitude in her words. "I will let you settle in. Tomorrow we can start on the repairs. Barn roof has weak spots and the fence along the north pasture needs mending before snow comes." "I can do that," she said. "I am strong and I learn quickly. I believe you." He moved toward the door, then paused. Jaida, that business in the square. Did you see what Gareth claimed was stolen? No, I have never been near his barn, not inside it. I walk the road sometimes, going between the village and the forest where I gather herbs to sell. That is all. But he has accused you before, caused trouble, her jaw tightened. 3 times now, small things. A missing chicken, coins from a collection box, a broken window. Always my word against his, and always others willing to believe the orc did it. She met his gaze. Today was different. Today he brought a crowd. I think he wanted to hurt me, really hurt me, and call it justice. Anger, quiet and cold, settled into Ethan's bones. He will not touch you here. You cannot watch me every moment. No, Ethan agreed. But the law can. Tomorrow I am riding to Milford to see the magistrate. I want this on record, a formal complaint against Gareth for false accusation. If he keeps doing this, there will be a pattern. Hope flickered across her face, quickly hidden. Magistrates do not often side with orcs. Magistrate Aldrich is fair. He does not like bullies and he respects evidence. Ethan opened the door. Get some rest. It has been a hard day. After he left, he walked to his own house in the gathering dusk. The place felt larger and emptier than usual, the silence pressing against his ears. He lit a lamp and made a simple meal, eating without tasting it. Through the window, he could see lamplight in the cottage, Jaida's shadow moving past the glass. He wondered what he had started today, stepping between her and the crowd. Part of him knew it was reckless, that it would cost him in ways he could not yet predict. But another part, the part that had lain dormant since Sarah's death, felt something like purpose stirring. That night, sleep came slowly. When it did, he dreamed of amber eyes and a voice asking why, over and over, until he woke in the dark with no answer except the truth he could not yet speak aloud. Morning came cold and clear, frost silvering the grass. Ethan rose early, as was his habit, and found Jaida already outside the cottage, breath steaming in the chill air. She had changed into work clothes, sturdy trousers and a wool shirt too large for her frame, sleeves rolled to her elbows. "I found these in the trunk," she said. "They fit well enough." "They were my hired man's. He left them behind." Ethan handed her a tin mug of coffee. "Thought you might need this." She wrapped both hands around the mug, inhaling the steam. "Thank you, I have not had real coffee in months." They drank in companionable silence, watching the sun climb above the eastern hills. The farm spread around them in gentle slopes, fields and pastures divided by stone walls and hedgerows. The barn stood solid and red against the pale sky, and beyond it, the forest rose dark and deep. "It is beautiful here," Jaida said quietly. "Peaceful, it can be." Ethan finished his coffee. Ready to work, she grinned, and he noticed how it changed her whole face, made her look younger and less guarded. Always. They started with the barn roof, Ethan climbing up to inspect the damage while Jaida hauled supplies. She was as strong as she had claimed, lifting bundles of shingles that would have made most men grunt with effort. She worked steadily, without complaint, and when he explained what needed doing, she understood quickly. By midday, they had replaced a dozen shingles and reinforced the weak spots. Ethan climbed down and found bread and cheese for lunch, and they sat on the fence rail, eating and watching his small herd of cattle graze. "How long have you had this farm?" Jaida asked. 22 years. I bought it young, worked like a demon to pay off the debt. My wife helped." He paused, the words coming easier than expected. "Sarah, she was good with animals, better than me, could calm a spooked horse with just her voice. She died 5 years ago. Yes, fever, it came fast, too fast for the doctor to help." Ethan stared at the horizon. "I should have seen the signs earlier, gotten help sooner, but I thought it was just a cold, that she would shake it off. By the time I realized how serious it was, there was nothing to be done. Jaida was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I lost my mother to fever too. I was 12. I know the guilt you carry, the wondering if you could have done more, but sickness does not wait for us to be ready, and sometimes there is nothing anyone can do." He looked at her, this orc girl who had already seen too much loss, and felt the knot in his chest loosen slightly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For understanding." They returned to work, and the afternoon passed in a blur of physical labor. Jaida proved herself capable in every task, from mending fence posts to organizing the tool shed. She did not shy from hard work or dirty jobs, and she asked good questions, the kind that showed she was thinking ahead. As the sun began to set, Ethan saddled his horse. "I am riding to Milford now before it gets full dark. Should be back by midnight. Bar your door while I am gone." Concern crossed her face. "You think Gareth will come?" "I think it pays to be careful." He swung into the saddle. "If anyone does come, do not answer. Just stay inside and wait for me. Be safe, Ethan." The use of his name, so natural and easy, made his heart skip. He nodded and urged his horse forward, not trusting himself to speak. The ride to Milford took 2 hours, the road winding through farmland and forest. Magistrate Aldrich lived above his office in the center of town, and lamplight showed in his windows. Ethan tied his horse and knocked. Aldrich answered the door himself, a tall man with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes. "Ethan Everett, this is unexpected. Come in." The office was lined with books and legal documents, a fire crackling in the hearth. Aldrich poured 2 glasses of whiskey and gestured to a chair. "What brings you out at this hour?" Ethan accepted the glass but did not drink. "I need to file a formal complaint against Gareth Morrison for false accusation and harassment." Aldrich's eyebrows rose. "That is a serious charge. Tell me what happened." Ethan recounted the scene in the square, sticking to facts, describing the lack of evidence and the threatening crowd. Aldrich listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker. "And this orc girl," Aldrich said when Ethan finished, "you believe she is innocent?" "I know she is." Gareth had no proof, just accusations. But this is the 4th time he has targeted her, and today he escalated to violence. If I had not intervened, I think he would have hurt her badly. "Where is she now?" "Working on my farm. I hired her." Aldrich studied him over the rim of his glass. "That will cause talk. It already has. And you are prepared for that." Ethan met his gaze steadily. "I am prepared to protect someone who has been wrongly accused and threatened. If that causes talk, so be it." Aldrich nodded slowly. "You are a good man, Ethan, principled. I respect that." He stood and moved to his desk, pulling out a ledger. "I will open an investigation into Gareth Morrison. If there have been multiple accusations without proof, that establishes a pattern of harassment. I will also send a deputy to interview witnesses from yesterday's incident." "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. This will not be easy. Gareth has family in the village, and sentiment against orcs runs strong. There will be those who side with him simply because the accused is not human." "I understand." Aldrich made notes in the ledger, then looked up. "One more thing. Keep the girl close and keep records. If she is working for you, document her tasks, her whereabouts, everything. If Gareth makes more accusations, you will need to prove her innocence." "I will." They shook hands, and Ethan rode back through the darkness, his mind turning over everything Aldrich had said. The investigation would help, but it would also bring scrutiny, questions, pressure. He had stirred up trouble in a village that preferred peace, even if that peace was built on injustice. When he reached the farm, the cottage was dark, a single candle burning in the window like a beacon. He stabled his horse and walked to his own house, but sleep was a long time coming. The next days fell into a rhythm. Ethan and Jaida worked side by side, repairing the farm and preparing for winter. She was quick to learn and tireless in her efforts, and he found himself looking forward to her company, to the easy conversations that sprang up over work. She told him about her childhood in a small orc settlement to the north, how her mother had been a healer and taught her about herbs. After her mother died, her father grew bitter and distant, and Jaida eventually left, seeking a better life. She had been wandering for 3 years, taking odd jobs where she could find them, never staying long in one place. People tolerate an orc worker when they need the labor, she said as they stacked firewood. But they never let you forget what you are, always watching, always suspicious. I got tired of it, tired of being afraid. You do not have to be afraid here, Ethan said. She smiled sadly. I want to believe that, but I have learned not to trust safety. It has a way of disappearing. He wanted to promise her that this time would be different, but the words felt hollow. So instead, he showed her through action, treating her with respect, listening when she spoke, valuing her work. Slowly, he saw the fear begin to ease from her shoulders. On the 5th day, the deputy arrived. He was a young man named Thomas, earnest and thorough. He interviewed Ethan and Jaida separately, taking careful notes. When he finished, he told them the investigation was ongoing, but several witnesses had confirmed that Gareth never produced any stolen tools, and that the confrontation had been aggressive and threatening. Magistrate Aldrich is taking this seriously, Thomas said. But you should know, Gareth is telling a different story. He claims he scared off the orc girl before she could steal anything, and that Ethan is being fooled by her. I am not being fooled, Ethan said flatly. I believe you. But others might not. Thomas hesitated. There is talk in the village. Some support you, but others think you are making a mistake, that you should have let them handle it their way. After Thomas left, Jaida stood by the fence staring toward the village. This is what I meant. You spent your standing and now people doubt you. Ethan came to stand beside her. Some people doubt me, others do not. That is how it works. Not everyone will agree, but as long as I know I did right, I can live with it. She turned to face him, amber eyes searching. How do you stay so steady? So certain. I am not certain about most things, he admitted. I make mistakes, question myself, wonder if I am doing enough or too much. But some things I know down to my bones. Protecting someone who cannot protect themselves, standing against cruelty, choosing honesty over convenience. Those things I am certain about. Because of your wife, partly. Sarah was good, truly good. She saw the best in people and brought it out. When she died, I felt like I had failed the most important test. I could not save her. He paused, the words difficult but necessary. The day I saw Gareth and his men surrounding you, I saw another chance. Maybe I could not save Sarah, but I could save you. I could stand between you and harm. It felt like something I had to do, not just should do. Jaida reached out and took his hand, her grip warm and firm. You did save me. You are still saving me. Every day I am here. Their eyes met and held, and Ethan felt that shift again, deeper this time. He was falling for her, had been falling since that first moment in the square. It terrified him, this feeling, because it meant risking his heart again after so long keeping it locked away. But looking at Jaida, at the strength and vulnerability in her face, he thought maybe the risk was worth it. Over the following weeks, the village began to fracture. Some families continued to trade with Ethan, respecting his judgment and his character. Others turned cold, refusing to speak to him at church, crossing the street to avoid him in town. Gareth's influence spread like poison, his whispers finding fertile ground in prejudice and fear. But there were unexpected allies too. Old Miriam, who ran the general store, made a point of greeting Jaida warmly when they came for supplies. Father Benedict, the village priest, stopped by the farm to meet Jaida and left satisfied that Ethan was doing good work. A few other farmers, men who valued fairness over gossip, made quiet gestures of support. The investigation continued. Magistrate Aldrich's deputy uncovered that Gareth had accused 3 other people, all outsiders or unpopular villagers, of theft in the past 2 years. None of the accusations had resulted in recovered property or convictions. A pattern emerged, clear and damning. In early December, Aldrich summoned Gareth to Milford to answer questions under oath. Ethan learned about it from Thomas, who stopped by the farm with news. Gareth denied everything, claimed all his accusations were legitimate, and that the lack of convictions just proved how clever the thieves were, Thomas said, shaking his head. But the magistrate did not buy it. He warned Gareth that one more false accusation would result in charges of harassment and possible jail time. He also ordered Gareth to make a public apology. "Will he do it?" Jaida asked. "He has to, or face penalties." "The apology is set for the winter market next week in the square where he accused you." Ethan felt a grim satisfaction. It was not perfect justice, but it was something. Gareth would have to publicly admit his wrong, and that would carry weight. But he also knew it would make Gareth more dangerous. A humiliated man with a grudge was capable of terrible things. The night before the winter market, snow began to fall, soft and steady. Ethan watched it from his window, thinking about the month since Jaida had arrived. The farm felt alive again, purposeful. He no longer dreaded the silence of his house because he knew that across the yard, lamplight glowed in the cottage, and Jaida was there, reading or mending clothes or simply resting after a day's work. He had fallen in love with her. He could admit it to himself now, in the privacy of his own thoughts. He loved her quiet strength, her sharp mind, the way she laughed at his dry humor. He loved how she had brought warmth back into his life, made him feel things he thought had died with Sarah. But loving her and telling her were different things. What could he offer? A life of difficulty, of being stared at and whispered about, of fighting for acceptance in a world that did not want them together. Was it fair to ask her to bear that burden? He did not have an answer. The winter market filled the square with stalls and people, the smell of roasted chestnuts and mulled cider mixing with wood smoke. Ethan and Jaida arrived together, and conversations faltered as they passed. Some faces were openly hostile, others merely curious. Magistrate Aldrich stood on the steps of the town hall, his presence commanding silence. Beside him, Gareth Morrison looked like he had been carved from stone, jaw clenched, eyes burning with suppressed rage. "We are here today," Aldrich announced, his voice carrying across the square, "because justice requires accountability. Gareth Morrison has been found to have made multiple false accusations against innocent people, including the incident that occurred in this very square 2 months ago. As penalty, and as a matter of public record, he will now apologize." The crowd murmured, some in approval, others in discontent. Gareth stepped forward stiffly. "I apologize," he said, the words ground out like gravel, "for my accusations against Jaida Blackthorne. I had no proof of wrongdoing, and my actions were unjust. It was perfunctory, barely civil, but it was public and witnessed." Aldrich nodded. "Let this serve as a warning. False accusations undermine the law and harm the innocent. There will be no tolerance for such behavior going forward." The crowd dispersed slowly, and Ethan felt Jaida's hand slip into his. She was trembling slightly, and he squeezed her fingers in reassurance. "It is done," he said quietly. "You are cleared." "I am cleared legally," she corrected, "but look at their faces. Half of them still believe I am guilty, that this is some kind of mistake or favoritism." She was right. But Ethan also saw the other half, the ones who nodded respectfully or smiled tentatively. Change was slow, but it was happening. They walked through the market, buying supplies and exchanging greetings with allies. Old Miriam pressed a bag of candy into Jaida's hands, whispering fierce encouragement. Father Benedict stopped to wish them well, his blessing genuine and kind. As they were leaving, Gareth stepped into their path. His face was a mask of fury barely contained. "This is not over," he said, voice low and vicious. "You made me look like a fool, Everett. You and your orc whore." Ethan's hand tightened on the sack he was carrying, but he kept his voice level. "Walk away, Gareth. You have done enough damage." "Not nearly enough." Gareth's gaze shifted to Jaida, ugly and threatening. "You think you are safe now. You think some magistrate's ruling changes what you are. You are still an orc, still a monster, and this village will see it eventually." Jaida lifted her chin, meeting his stare without flinching. "I think you are a small, cruel man who hates anyone who reminds you of your own failures, but I am not afraid of you anymore." For a moment, Ethan thought Gareth might strike her. But then Thomas appeared, hand on his truncheon, and Gareth backed down with a snarl. "Remember my words," Gareth said, and stalked away into the crowd. Thomas watched him go, then turned to Ethan. "Be careful. He is not done making trouble. I know." They rode back to the farm in tense silence. The snow had grown heavier, blanketing the fields in white. Inside the barn, Ethan helped Jaida unsaddle the horses, both of them working with the ease of long practice. "Thank you," Jaida said as they finished, "for standing with me again, for not backing down. I will always stand with you." She looked at him, snowflakes melting in her dark hair, and something shifted in the air between them. The barn was warm with animal heat, quiet except for the soft sounds of the horses settling. "Ethan," she said, and his name in her voice was a question and a confession all at once. He closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. Her skin was warm beneath his palms, and when she leaned into his touch, he felt his heart stutter. "I am in love with you," he said, the words simple and true. "I have been for weeks now, maybe since the first day. I know it complicates everything, makes life harder, but I cannot pretend otherwise anymore. You have brought light back into my world, Jaida. You have made me feel alive again." Her amber eyes shone with tears. "I love you too. I have tried to keep my distance because I knew the cost. But every day with you makes it harder to imagine being anywhere else. You make me feel safe, valued, seen. Not as an orc or an outsider, but as myself." He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, and she responded with a fierceness that stole his breath. They broke apart, foreheads touching, both trembling. "What do we do now?" she whispered. "We live," he said. "We work the farm, we face whatever comes, and we do it together. If the village accepts us, good. If not, we build our own life here and let our happiness be enough. It will be hard." "Yes, but worth it." She smiled, and it was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "Then I am with you, Ethan Everett, for all the hard days and good ones alike." They stood there in the barn, holding each other as snow whispered against the roof. And Ethan felt a peace he had not known in years settle into his bones. Winter deepened, and the farm became a world unto itself. Ethan and Jaida worked together through the short, cold days, maintaining the animals and repairing equipment. In the evenings, Jaida moved from the cottage to the main house, and they cooked meals together, read by the fire, talked about everything and nothing. The village remained divided, but Ethan found he cared less as time went on. The people who mattered, who valued character over prejudice, remained his friends. The others were not worth the effort of worrying. Gareth stayed quiet, but it was the silence of a predator waiting. Ethan remained vigilant, checking the property regularly, making sure nothing was amiss. Thomas stopped by occasionally with updates. The magistrate had Gareth under close watch, and any more trouble would result in immediate consequences. In late January, a hard freeze settled over the region. Ethan woke one morning to find ice coating every surface, the world transformed into crystal. He dressed quickly and went to check the animals, making sure they had water that had not frozen solid. Jaida met him in the barn, already breaking ice from the water troughs. They worked in comfortable silence, their breath steaming in the frigid air. As they finished, Ethan heard something that made him pause. A crackling sound, faint but growing louder. He stepped outside and saw smoke rising from the direction of Gareth Morrison's farm. Thick, black smoke that spoke of a serious fire. "Stay here," he told Jaida, already running for his horse. "I am coming with you," she said, her tone brooking no argument. They rode hard across the frozen fields following the smoke. When they reached Gareth's property, they found his barn fully engulfed, flames leaping into the gray sky. Gareth and his brothers were trying to fight it with buckets of water, but the fire was too strong, too far gone. Ethan dismounted and ran to help, grabbing a bucket. Jaida was right behind him, and together they joined the line passing water from the well. It was brutal work, the heat searing their faces while the cold numbed their backs. But slowly, desperately, they gained ground. Other neighbors arrived, drawn by the smoke. Even those who had sided against Ethan in the village dispute came to help, because a barn fire was a communal disaster. Everyone worked together, and after 2 hours of grueling effort, the fire was out, leaving only smoking ruins and exhausted people. Gareth stood staring at the wreckage, his face blackened with soot and blank with shock. Ethan approached carefully. "I am sorry for your loss," he said. Gareth turned to look at him, then at Jaida, who stood nearby. Something complicated passed over his features. Anger, grief, and perhaps the first hint of shame. "You came to help," Gareth said hoarsely, "after everything." "It was the right thing to do." Gareth looked away. "I do not understand you, Everett. I have caused you nothing but trouble, spread lies about her, tried to turn the village against you. And you still came. Because letting your barn burn would not teach you anything except bitterness," Ethan said. "Because even when someone is your enemy, they can still need help." Gareth was silent for a long moment. Then quietly he said, "I have been a bastard. To you, to her, to a lot of people. I do not expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I see it now, what I have been." It was not a full apology, not a promise to change. But it was acknowledgement, and that was something. "I hope you find a better path," Ethan said simply, and walked back to where Jaida waited. They rode home through the frozen afternoon, neither speaking until they reached the farm. Then Jaida said, "You are a better man than I could ever be." "I wanted to let his barn burn. Part of me did too," Ethan admitted. "But Sarah used to say that being good is not about never feeling anger or hate. It is about choosing kindness even when those feelings are present. I think she was right. I think I would have liked her." "She would have liked you too." That night, as they sat by the fire, Ethan asked Jaida to marry him. It was not a grand gesture, no speech prepared. He simply took her hand and said, "Will you be my wife?" She looked at him with tears streaming down her green cheeks. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They married in early spring, in a quiet ceremony at the farm with Father Benedict presiding. Old Miriam and Thomas stood as witnesses, along with a handful of other friends. It was small and simple, and absolutely perfect. The village's reaction was mixed. Some celebrated, sending gifts and well wishes. Others muttered disapproval but kept their distance. Gareth Morrison, true to the glimmer of change Ethan had seen, did not cause trouble. He rebuilt his barn with help from neighbors, and while he never became friendly, he stopped spreading poison. By summer, Jaida was pregnant. They welcomed the news with quiet joy, making plans for the baby's arrival. Ethan built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth and carving small flowers into the headboard. Jaida sewed blankets and tiny clothes, her hands gentle and sure. In late autumn, as the harvest came in strong and full, Jaida gave birth to a daughter. They named her Rosalind, and she was perfect, with her mother's green skin and her father's gray eyes. Ethan held her in his arms and felt his heart expand to accommodate this new, overwhelming love. The village organized a harvest gathering in the square, a tradition to celebrate the year's bounty and give thanks. Ethan and Jaida attended, Rosalind bundled against the chill in Jada's arms. As they entered the same square where Jaida had once been cornered and threatened, something remarkable happened. People greeted them. Not everyone, but enough. Families who had been neutral or even hostile approached to congratulate them, to coo over the baby, to offer genuine warmth. The square that had once been a place of fear became, in that moment, a place of welcome. Old Miriam took Rosalind from Jada's arms, rocking her gently. "She is beautiful. You two have made something truly special here." Father Benedict raised a cup in toast. "To Ethan and Jaida Everett and their daughter Rosalind, may they continue to show us what courage and kindness can build." The gathered crowd echoed the toast, and Ethan felt Jada's hand slip into his. She looked up at him, amber eyes bright with tears and joy. "We did it," she whispered. "We found our place. We made our place," he corrected gently. "Together." As the celebration continued around them, music and laughter filling the cool evening air, Ethan thought about the path that had brought them here. The fear and anger, the standing against cruelty, the slow building of trust and love. It had not been easy, and the future would surely hold more challenges. But standing there in the square, with his wife at his side and his daughter sleeping peacefully in a neighbor's arms, surrounded by community that had learned, however slowly, to see past prejudice to the people beneath, Ethan knew they would face whatever came. Because they had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The years that followed brought their own trials and triumphs. The farm prospered under their joint care, and Rosalind grew into a bright, curious child who charmed everyone she met. More families in the village came to accept the Everetts, drawn by their honesty and hard work. Gareth Morrison never became a friend, but he stopped being an active enemy. He remarried, started his own family, and on rare occasions, Ethan caught him watching Rosalind play with something like wistfulness in his eyes. The scars of prejudice did not disappear overnight. There were still those who muttered, still moments of casual cruelty that stung. But the community, fractured by conflict, had begun to reform on more honest terms. Not everyone changed their hearts, but enough did to make a difference. On Rosalind's 5th birthday, the village held a festival in the square. Children ran laughing through the stalls, and Rosalind was among them, her green skin and tusks simply part of the beautiful diversity of the crowd. Jaida stood with a group of women, discussing the upcoming planting season, and Ethan realized with quiet amazement that she had found genuine friends. Thomas, now deputy magistrate, stopped to shake Ethan's hand. "You have built something good here, Ethan. Changed minds that I thought would never change." "We just lived our lives," Ethan said. "Treated people fairly, showed up when help was needed. The rest followed." "It was more than that, and you know it. You stood between her and a mob when no one else would. You spent your standing to do right. That mattered. That changed things." Perhaps it had. Ethan did not dwell on it, preferring to focus on the present moment, on Rosalind's laughter and Jada's smile, and the warmth of community that had been earned through patience and principle. As the sun set and lanterns were lit across the square, Ethan found Jaida and pulled her close. They stood together, watching their daughter dance with other children, the scene so normal and yet so miraculous. "You remember the first day we stood in this square?" Jaida asked softly. "Every detail. I was so afraid. I thought they would kill me and no one would care. I cared." She turned in his arms, cupping his face. "You did more than care. You stepped between me and harm, spent everything you had built to protect a stranger. You gave me a life, Ethan. A real life with safety and love and belonging. How do I ever thank you for that? You do not have to thank me. You gave me just as much. You brought me back from grief, showed me I could love again, built a family and a future with me. We saved each other." They kissed softly, and around them the festival continued, music and light filling the autumn evening. Rosalind ran up, demanding her parents join the dancing, and they let her pull them into the celebration. In that moment, surrounded by community and family, the past and future merged into a perfect present. The quiet farmer who had once stepped between an orc girl and a threatening crowd now danced with his wife and daughter in a square that had learned to welcome instead of threaten. It was not a perfect world. Prejudice still existed, challenges still arose, and some hearts remained closed. But it was their world, built on love and defended with courage, and it was enough. As stars appeared in the darkening sky and Rosalind's laughter rang out bright and clear, Ethan Everett held his family close and felt nothing but gratitude for the choice he had made that day in the square, for the woman who had trusted him enough to stay, for the life they had created together against all odds. The harvest gathering wound down slowly, families drifting home with full hearts and tired feet. The Everetts walked back to their farm under a sky brilliant with stars, Rosalind drowsy on Ethan's shoulders, Jaida's hand warm in his. The cottage that had once housed a frightened, homeless orc girl now stood empty, transformed into a storage building. The main house glowed with lamplight and welcome, a place of belonging they had built together through love and stubborn hope. Inside, they tucked Rosalind into the cradle Ethan had made, now almost too small for her growing frame. She murmured in her sleep, a smile on her lips, safe and cherished. Ethan and Jaida stood together in the doorway, watching their daughter sleep, and no words were needed. Everything they had fought for, everything they had built, rested peacefully in that small bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, the ongoing negotiation of a life lived at the intersection of two worlds. But tonight, there was only peace, only love, only the quiet joy of a family that had earned its happiness through courage and grace. Ethan closed the door softly, took his wife's hand, and led her to their own room. Outside, the farm rested under starlight, fields and barn and animals all settled for the night. It was a good place, a safe place, a place where an orc woman and a human man had proven that love could bridge any divide. And in the village square, where fear had once ruled, the lanterns burned down to embers, leaving only the memory of music and laughter and a community learning slowly but surely that acceptance was stronger than hate. The story that had begun with 10 villagers cornering an orc girl and one quiet farmer stepping between them had transformed into something larger, something hopeful. Not because the world changed overnight, but because two people chose love over fear, justice over convenience, and built a life that proved those choices right. Years turned like pages, and the Everett farm became a landmark of a different kind. Not just for its good soil and healthy livestock, but for what it represented. Visitors passing through would point it out, tell the story of the farmer who had stood against a mob and married the orc woman he protected. Some told it as a cautionary tale, others as inspiration, but everyone knew it. Rosalind grew tall and strong, her heritage a source of pride rather than shame. She worked alongside her parents, learning farming from her father and healing arts from her mother, who had returned to the herbal knowledge her own mother had taught her. The girl who had once been chased through streets now walked them freely, and those who had threatened her mother now tipped their hats respectfully. On the 10th anniversary of that day in the square, the village unveiled a small monument, not to erase the ugliness of what had almost happened, but to commemorate the choice that had been made instead. A simple stone marker that read, "Here, justice stood when it was needed most." Ethan found it embarrassing, the attention and ceremony. But Jaida understood what it meant, not just for them, but for others who might face similar crossroads. The village was acknowledging its own capacity for cruelty and celebrating the moment someone had chosen better. Magistrate Aldrich, now retired but still sharp of mind, spoke at the dedication. "We mark this spot not because we were good, but because we learned to be better. One man's courage and one woman's grace taught us that fear is a poor foundation for community. May we remember the lesson." The crowd that gathered was 3 times larger than the mob that had once threatened violence. They came to celebrate, to acknowledge growth, to promise that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. That night, as they walked home in the late spring twilight, Rosalind between them holding both their hands, Ethan felt the weight of years settle comfortably on his shoulders. He was older now, his hair graying, his body bearing the marks of a life of hard work. But he was happy, deeply and truly happy in a way he had once thought impossible. "You ever regret it?" Jaida asked suddenly. "The cost of standing with me that day." Ethan stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Rosalind, sensing the seriousness of the moment, stood quietly beside them. "Never," he said firmly. "Not once. You and Rosalind are the best things in my life. Everything I spent I got back 1,000-fold in love and joy. That day in the square was not the end of my old life. It was the beginning of my real one." Jada's eyes shimmered with tears. "I ask because I want you to know I see it. I see everything you gave up, every friendship that fractured, every hardship we have faced. And I am grateful every single day that you chose me." "I chose love," Ethan corrected. "I chose right over easy. And I would make the same choice again without hesitation." Rosalind tugged on both their hands. "Can we go home now? I am hungry and Mama promised berry tart." They laughed, the serious moment breaking into warmth, and continued their walk home. The farm rose before them in the gathering dusk, solid and welcoming, a testament to everything they had built together. Inside, Jaida cut generous slices of berry tart while Ethan stoked the fire. Rosalind chattered about her day, about the friends she had made, the lessons she was learning, the world she was discovering. She spoke with the confidence of a child who had never known real fear, who had been raised in love and security. It was, Ethan reflected, the greatest gift they could have given her. Not wealth or status, but the certainty of belonging, the knowledge that she was valued exactly as she was. As the evening wore on and Rosalind was tucked into her bed, now a proper child's bed built by Ethan's own hands, Ethan and Jaida sat together on their porch. The spring night was mild, filled with the sound of crickets and the distant call of night birds. "I have been thinking," Jaida said slowly, "about expanding the herb garden, maybe selling remedies at the market. There is a need and I have the knowledge." "That is a good idea. People trust your skill. Some people. Others still see an orc and assume I am peddling poison. Then we prove them wrong, one remedy at a time. Same as we have done with everything else." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. Not easy, but simple. We do good work, treat people fairly, and let the results speak. Time and consistency change minds better than arguments. When did you become so wise? She teased. I married a woman smarter than me. Some of it rubbed off. She laughed, the sound light and free, and Ethan felt his heart swell with contentment. This life, this love, this family they had built from courage and kindness, it was everything he had never dared hope for. The seasons continued their endless cycle, and the Everett farm thrived. Jaida's remedies became known throughout the region, sought after for their effectiveness. She taught Rosalind the craft, passing down the knowledge her mother had given her, creating a chain of wisdom and care that stretched across generations. Ethan's fields produced abundant harvests, and his reputation as a fair dealer grew. Other farmers came to him for advice, and he gave it freely, believing that prosperity shared was prosperity multiplied. They were not wealthy in gold, but rich in ways that mattered more. They had love, respect, community, and purpose. They had built something lasting not through force or cunning, but through the simple, revolutionary act of treating everyone with dignity. On a crisp autumn morning, as Rosalind helped her father mend fence and Jaida gathered herbs in the garden, Ethan paused in his work to look around. The farm, the family, the life they had created, all of it had started with a single choice in a village square. He thought about the man he had been before that day, locked in grief, going through the motions of living without really being alive. He thought about how easy it would have been to walk past, to let the crowd have its way, to protect himself and his standing. And he thought about what he would have lost. Not just Jaida and Rosalind, though they were precious beyond measure, but his own soul, his sense of self, the knowledge that when it mattered most, he had stood for something good. "Papa," Rosalind called, pulling him from his thoughts. "The fence is not going to mend itself." He grinned and returned to work, his daughter's laughter ringing out across the fields. And in that moment, Ethan Everett knew with absolute certainty that stepping between the mob and the frightened orc girl had been the most important thing he had ever done. Not because it made him a hero, but because it had led him here, to this life, to this family, to this moment of perfect, ordinary happiness. The sun climbed higher, warming the autumn air, and the Everetts worked together in companionable silence, building their future one fence post, one planted seed, one act of love at a time. It was enough. It was everything. And it was theirs, earned through courage and held fast by hope. In the village square, the monument stood silent witness to the day everything changed. But the real monument was not stone and words. It was a farm where an orc woman and a human man raised their daughter in peace. It was a community that had learned, however slowly, to be better than its fears. It was love, stubborn and enduring, proving that the distance between stranger and family, between fear and acceptance, was only ever one brave step. And Ethan Everett, quiet farmer and unlikely hero, had taken that step when it mattered most. The rest was simply living, loving, and building a life worthy of that choice. As evening approached and the family gathered for supper, the farmhouse glowed with warmth and light. Inside, around a sturdy table Ethan had built and Jaida had polished smooth, they shared food and stories and laughter. Outside, the world continued its complicated dance of progress and setback, acceptance and prejudice. But here, in this home built on courage and sustained by love, there was only peace. Rosalind asked for another story before bed, and Jaida obliged, telling tales of healers and heroes while Ethan cleaned the dishes. The rhythms of family life, simple and profound, filled the house with meaning. Later, when their daughter slept and the house was quiet, Ethan and Jaida stood together at the bedroom window, looking out at the farm bathed in moonlight. "You remember," Jaida said softly, "when I asked you why you stepped between me and the mob? I remember. You said it was right, But it was more than that, was it not? Ethan considered the question. It was right, but it was also necessary for my own soul. I could not walk past someone in need and still live with myself. Sarah taught me that, and her death reinforced it. We have so few chances in life to make a real difference. When one comes, we have to take it, consequences be damned. Even if the consequences are hard, especially then. The easy choices do not need courage. Jaida turned in his arms, her amber eyes reflecting moonlight. I love you, Ethan Everett, not just for saving me that day, but for every day since. For building this life with me, for never making me feel like a burden or a mistake, for loving our daughter and teaching her to be brave. I love you too, he said simply, more than I have words for. They stood in silence, holding each other, two souls who had found each other across every divide the world could create. And in the quiet of the night, with their daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall and their farm resting beneath the stars, they knew what they had was rare and precious. Not because it was easy, but because it was earned, chosen, fought for, and defended with every ounce of courage they possessed. The story that had begun with fear and violence in a village square had transformed into something beautiful. A testament to the power of one person choosing right over expedient, kindness over cruelty, love over fear. And as Ethan Everett held his wife and looked out at the life they had built together, he felt nothing but gratitude for the day 10 villagers had cornered an orc girl in the square, and he had stepped between them. It had cost him his old life, but it had given him everything that mattered. And that, he thought as sleep finally claimed him, was a trade he would make every time,